Today I want to look at iterative statements. Iterative statements are used to repeat lines of code multiple times. It might be that I want to do the lines of code again because the user didn't do it properly. Look at this example. Here I'm asking them to enter a name, and then I'm storing the name they entered in first name. Well, what happens if they don't type in a name? I want them to carry on doing that until they actually type something in. So I might want to ask them again and again, but I don't know how many times they're going to get it wrong. Or I might be typing up something like the list of names in a class, and there are 30 people in the class, and I want to do this 30 times. What I don't want to have to do is to duplicate the lines of code lots of times. Iterative statements are used to force the user to do lines of code more than once. There are three basic styles. The first one is the do while. In this case, the programming language comes in at the do. Console write line would write on the screen, enter your name. The console read line waits for the user to type something in, stores what they type in first name, and then the while statement says, if they didn't type anything in, if first name is still blank, then let's go back and do it again. And the program will go back to this line, write out, enter your name again, come to this line, wait for them to type something in, store what they type in first name, and again sees if first name is equal to nothing. And if first name is equal to nothing, it goes back again and says write it out again. Keeps on doing that as many times as the user is stupid enough just to press return. The next example is very similar, but it has one key difference. In this case, the while comes first, while the first name is equal to nothing. So right at the start, it checks to see, is there something already stored in first name? And if there isn't, then it will display the message, wait for the user to type in the first name, and if they did type something in, it will carry on, but if they didn't, it will go back, enter the name, wait for it. Key point is, at the start, when it comes to this line for the very first time, if the name has already been set, then it will skip these two lines of code completely and move on. The third type of iterative statement is the for loop. Now, for loops are used when you know exactly how many times you want to repeat a line of code. They set up a count. Doesn't have to be called count. Count's just a variable. In this case, I set my count to 1 to start off with. I tell it to carry on doing this loop while count is less than or equal to 10. And the count plus plus says each time increase the count by 1. And what I'm doing in this case is saying enter your name, read in the name, store it in first name. And what will happen is it will go through these two instructions exactly 10 times. The problem is in this particular case that it might do it 10 times, but at the end of the day, it will only remember the last name. And that's because first name is a single variable. So it can only store one name, so it will ask them for 10 names and only remember the last one. 4 next loops come into their own when you're using arrays. If you set up an array, then you can use this type of a statement to say actually read them in to whatever name the count is up to. So when the count is on 1, store it in names 1, and the count is on 2, store it in names 2. There will be a separate video all about arrays for you to watch to get a better understanding. But it's worth noting at this point that arrays are extremely important, and therefore how to go through each element of the array is also extremely important. There is another iterative statement starting to creep in, and that is the for each statement. And again, for each you can only use if you've got something like an array. And what it does is tell it to go through each element of that array. So you can see in this example, for each name in the array names, write out that name. But again, more on that when we do more detailed work on arrays.